Hi everyone. So I'm going to be answering question 1 to start, which is thinking about the different strategies that have and have not been successful for me as a learner and comparing them to whether they'd be successful or not for other ENL students. One of the very first things that I noticed when I was thinking about this question and reading all the different readings was on page 19 of the 120 Different Strategies book. It references response time and how that's different between cultures. For me, that was really interesting. It's not necessarily a strategy, but I found that in schools here in the United States, they've generally always wanted students who raise their hand and answer quickly, and that has never been me. My videos are probably going to be really awkward because it takes me a little while to put my thoughts together and have them make sense. So I've never been somebody who's been really fast at responding. So that part just really stood out to me personally as a learner, and I'm sure that lots of students who are learning English as a second language probably feel the same way, that they have great thoughts, they just can't put them together in their head fast enough to respond the way we often want them to here in the United States. I was also looking at some strategies that I felt were successful for me as a learner. One of the big ones was on page 47. It was strategy 6, and it said that you use 2 or more cognitive strategies. I remember learning in 7th grade how to take notes and how to really study well, and my teacher at the time, a social studies teacher in particular, sat down with the whole class and showed us how just listening or just reading isn't enough, and gave us all these different strategies for highlighting, note-taking, organizing information, and to this day it is still the way that I choose to take notes and how I learn best. I find I cannot just listen or just read and actually remember everything I want to say or everything that I've learned. I have to write it down, I have to organize it, and I kind of have to put it into my own words. So I think that was a really helpful strategy. The other strategy that stood out to me was on page 50, and it said use think alouds and modeling. I believe it was strategy number 9. This goes along with just the way that I learn best is by watching other people do something or having somebody model something for me. One of the times that I really realized what a visual learner I was when I was getting ready to take my lifeguarding test at the beginning of high school. I've always known how to swim, but when you take your lifeguarding test and get into the course, they of course want you to swim with rhythmic breathing and swim correctly, and I'd never really done that. So I went to the pool and I watched people. I found some people who I thought looked like really great swimmers, and I probably just sat on the bleachers and watched them for like 30 minutes before I got into the pool and tried to imitate what they were doing. So I think that modeling definitely is a great way for at least myself and probably others to learn, especially I think ENL learners, because just hearing something might not be enough if they don't fully understand the language. But if you show them exactly what to do, I think it will make more sense to them. Let's see. Something that wasn't necessarily helpful for me, but that I found helpful for my students when I'm teaching is on pages 22 and 23. It talks a little bit about how computations work differently in math in different cultures. I remember learning that in one of my elementary math classes in college, and I looked into a whole bunch of different ways, and now even as a teacher, I use all different methods to teach students to solve problems, and I found that that's been really helpful for my students as a whole, to not just be shown the standard algorithm we use here, but to show them a whole bunch of different ways. I did the same thing when I taught in South America. I introduced them to the way we do math here, which is a little different than there, and having multiple ways and being able to compare was really helpful. So I think that utilizing some of what our ENL students know from their own cultures probably has benefits also for the rest of the class. The one thing that I found that's not super useful is mnemonics. The only reason that I'm not the biggest fan is it just kind of helps you to remember the information and not understand it with very much depth, especially in a subject like math. that just leads to the little like tricks and algorithms, and it doesn't really help students understand exactly what is happening. I'd rather do something like what was suggested on page 36, where an ENL becomes a specialist in a topic and then allows them to go deep into their information. So overall, there were a lot of interesting strategies so far in the book. Most of them were similar to things that I had in my classes or use in my class, and most of them are very helpful, though some of them I definitely would use more than others.